I never imagined that the happiest day of my life would become the day everything I believed in collapsed. People often say betrayal feels like a knife in the back. They're wrong. A knife is quick. Betrayal is slow. It smiles at you across the breakfast table. It kisses your forehead before work. It asks if you want coffee. It remembers your birthday. Then, one ordinary afternoon, it tears your entire world apart. My name is Emily Carter. For 12 years, I believed I had the perfect marriage. My husband, Daniel, wasn't just my husband. He was my best friend. We met in college, survived broke apartments, dead-end jobs, family problems, and every challenge life threw at us. When people asked us how we stayed so happy together, Daniel always wrapped his arm around me and smiled. She's my home. I believed him. God, I believed every single word. Our life wasn't glamorous. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Seattle. A blue two-story house. A golden retriever named Charlie. Saturday morning pancakes. Movie nights every Friday. The kind of life people secretly wished they had. There was only one thing missing. Children. For 7 years we tried. Doctors. Treatments. Hope. Disappointment. Again. And again. Eventually, the doctors looked at us with sympathetic eyes. We're sorry. Those 2 words changed us. Daniel held my hand all the way home. We'll be okay, he whispered. I nodded because I wanted to believe him. Deep down, I wondered if losing the chance to become parents would slowly destroy us. Instead, Daniel became even kinder. He surprised me with flowers. Weekend trips. Little love notes hidden inside my purse. Every time I cried after another failed appointment, he held me until I stopped shaking. I thanked God for giving me a husband like him. If only I had known. If only I had looked closer. My best friend, Sarah, entered my life when I was 23. She was funny, confident, fearless, the type of woman who could make an entire room laugh within seconds. She became like a sister. She helped plan my wedding. She stood beside me as my maid of honor. She knew every secret I'd ever shared. Every fear. Every dream. Every heartbreak. I trusted her more than anyone besides Daniel. Sometimes she'd joke that if Daniel ever left me, she'd take my side. We laughed. The joke wasn't funny anymore. Months before everything exploded, small things began changing. Daniel started working late. Meetings. Business dinners. Unexpected phone calls. He insisted nothing was wrong. I believed him. Because trust doesn't disappear overnight. It dies one excuse at a time. Sarah also became distant. She canceled girls' nights. Ignored messages. Claimed work was stressful. When we did meet, she seemed distracted. Nervous. She avoided looking directly into my eyes. I assumed she was dealing with something personal. I never pushed. Friends deserve privacy, right? Looking back now, every warning sign was there. I simply refused to see them. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I left work early because I had a migraine. Daniel texted, "Working late. Don't wait for dinner." Nothing unusual. I stopped by a grocery store, bought pasta, tomatoes, garlic bread. Charlie greeted me with his usual excitement. The house felt strangely quiet. As I walked toward the kitchen, I noticed Daniel had forgotten his laptop. Weird. He never forgot that laptop. I picked it up to take it upstairs. Then his phone buzzed. It had been left beside the laptop. Normally, I never looked. Never. Privacy mattered. But the screen lit up before I could turn away. One message. One name. Sarah. My heart skipped. The preview read, "She can't know until after tomorrow." I froze. My stomach tightened. Maybe it was work. Maybe it was a surprise party. Maybe. There are 1,000 lies we tell ourselves before accepting the truth. I unlocked nothing. I opened nothing. I simply placed the phone back where it was. Yet something inside me had changed. For the first time in 12 years, I wondered if I truly knew the man I had married. That night Daniel came home after 11. He smelled different. Not perfume. Baby lotion. I remember thinking how strange that scent was. He kissed my forehead. "You okay?" "Just tired." He smiled. "I love you." I whispered it back, but the words felt heavier than they ever had before. I barely slept. The next morning, Sarah called. Her voice sounded shaky. Emily, can we meet tomorrow? Of course. I need to tell you something. A strange chill ran down my spine. What happened? Silence. Then she forced a laugh. Nothing serious. People only say nothing serious when everything is serious. The following afternoon, I arrived at our favorite cafe 15 minutes early. Sarah never came. Instead, I received a phone call. Not from Sarah. From an unfamiliar hospital number. Is this Emily Carter? Yes. Ma'am, we're calling because Sarah Mitchell has been admitted after going into premature labor. My mind went blank. Labor? Sarah was pregnant? She never told me. You're listed as an emergency contact. There must be some mistake. There isn't. The nurse continued speaking. I barely heard another word. Pregnant. Emergency contact. Why hadn't she told me? Why hide something so important? I rushed to the hospital with my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. Not the crying babies. Not Sarah's terrified face. Not Daniel standing beside her hospital bed, holding her hand, as if he belonged there. And when our eyes met, the color drained from his face. Daniel's hand slipped away from Sarah's the instant he saw me. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The only sounds in the room were the soft beeping of the heart monitor and the cries of two newborn babies from the bassinets beside the bed. My eyes moved from Daniel to Sarah and finally to the twins. Sarah looked exhausted. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. Emily, she whispered. I couldn't answer. The air felt too heavy to breathe. A nurse stepped toward me with a warm smile, clearly unaware of the storm unfolding in the room. You must be Emily. Congratulations. The babies are healthy. Congratulations? The word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I stared at Daniel. What is she talking about? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in 12 years, my husband had no words. I looked back at Sarah. Tell me what's going on. She buried her face in her hands. I'm so sorry. 3 words. 3 words that confirmed my worst fear before anyone explained a single thing. I felt my knees weaken. Daniel, I said quietly, answer me. His voice barely rose above a whisper. We should talk somewhere else. No. I took 1 step toward him. We're talking right here. The room fell silent. Even the nurses exchanged uneasy glances before quietly stepping outside, closing the door behind them. Now it was just the 3 of us. And 2 newborn babies whose existence had shattered my world. Daniel rubbed his face. It isn't as simple as it looks. I laughed. A sharp, broken laugh that didn't sound like my own. A man standing beside my best friend while she gives birth to twins isn't simple? No one answered. I looked at the bassinets again. The little boy yawned in his sleep. The little girls stretched one tiny hand into the air. They were beautiful, completely innocent. None of this was their fault. But one question burned inside me. I turned back to Daniel. Are they yours? He lowered his eyes. That was answer enough. A cold numbness spread through my body. I wasn't crying. Not yet. Some pain is too large for tears. It simply leaves you empty. I slipped my wedding ring from my finger and placed it on the bedside table. The soft click against the wood sounded louder than any scream. Daniel looked up. Emily. I took one last look at the man I had trusted with my entire life. I'll have the divorce papers ready. Without another word, I walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard Sarah sobbing. Daniel called my name. I never looked back. Emily spent the next 3 days in complete silence. She ignored Daniel's calls, blocked his messages, and moved into her older sister Rachel's guest room. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the hospital room, the twins, Sarah's tears, and Daniel standing beside her as if he'd been living a second life all along. On the 4th morning, her lawyer emailed the divorce papers. She signed them without hesitation. That afternoon, Daniel appeared outside Rachel's house. He looked exhausted, his beard unshaven, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Please, he said as Emily stepped onto the porch. Just give me 10 minutes. You already had 12 years. I know what it looks like. No, Emily replied calmly. You know what you made it look like. Before Daniel could answer, another car pulled into the driveway. An elderly woman stepped out. Daniel's mother, Margaret. She hurried toward Emily, ignoring her own son. Emily, she said breathlessly, don't sign those papers yet. Emily frowned. Why? Margaret glanced at Daniel with disappointment. You still haven't told her? Daniel looked away. Margaret's face turned pale. Oh, Daniel, what have you done? Emily felt her heartbeat quicken. What is everyone talking about? Margaret hesitated for several seconds before speaking. The little boy. She swallowed hard. Daniel didn't tell you who his father really is? Emily stared at her in confusion. What do you mean? Everyone at the hospital acted like those babies were his. Margaret closed her eyes. That's only half the truth. Daniel stepped forward. Mom, please. No, Margaret interrupted firmly. You've hidden enough. Emily looked from one face to the other. For the first time since the hospital, she realized there was still a secret no one had explained. And whatever it was big enough to terrify Daniel. Emily stared at Margaret, searching for answers she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. The truth, she said quietly. No more half-truths. Margaret nodded. Years ago, before you and Daniel were married, Sarah made a decision that changed all of your lives. Daniel tried to help someone he cared about, but he made terrible choices and then spent years hiding them. Daniel closed his eyes. I thought I was protecting everyone. You were protecting yourself, Emily replied. Margaret continued. Those babies deserve honesty. So do you. For the first time, Daniel admitted that he had been living with guilt for years. Every lie had led to another, until the truth became impossible to explain. Emily listened without interrupting. When he finished, the silence was overwhelming. Finally, she spoke. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Daniel nodded slowly. I don't expect you to. Emily stood up. But I can decide who I want to be from this moment forward. She looked toward the nursery window where the twins slept peacefully. They're innocent. Margaret smiled through tears. They are. Emily picked up her purse. My future won't be defined by your lies. She walked toward the door, unsure what tomorrow would bring, but certain she would never again ignore the truth when it stood in front of her. Outside, the morning sun finally broke through the clouds. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt she could breathe. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Emily stood outside the courthouse holding a single folder. There were no dramatic arguments, no last-minute confessions, and no tears left to cry. Some endings don't arrive with a storm. They arrive with silence. She walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than she had in years. Daniel watched from across the street, but didn't approach. He knew there was nothing left to say. Some mistakes couldn't be undone with apologies. Over the following months, Emily focused on rebuilding her life. She returned to painting, something she had abandoned after getting married. She volunteered at a local children's center and slowly rediscovered the parts of herself that had disappeared beneath years of grief and disappointment. One afternoon, she received an unexpected letter from Margaret. Inside was a handwritten note. Emily, I will always be sorry for the pain my family caused you. Thank you for showing more grace than we deserved. I hope one day you'll remember that not everyone who breaks your heart deserves to keep it. Emily folded the letter carefully. She wasn't ready to forgive, but she was ready to stop carrying the anger. Months later, she crossed paths with Sarah at a community fundraiser. Sarah approached hesitantly. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. Emily looked at the twins, now laughing in a stroller. They're beautiful. Sarah nodded, tears filling her eyes. They deserve better than the mistakes we made. Emily smiled gently. So do we. For the first time, there was no bitterness between them, only acceptance. As Emily walked away, she realized something important. The greatest revenge wasn't making someone regret losing you. It was creating a life so full of peace that their betrayal no longer defined your future. She looked up at the clear blue sky and took a deep breath. The woman who had entered the courthouse months earlier was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who finally understood that the end of one chapter is often the beginning of the best one. She smiled to herself and whispered, "I'm finally free."